that I would like to see go to this account at the special town meeting, which takes place before the annual town meeting. And those are the $300,000 from employee benefits, $200,000 from the cell tower account. You'll note that that's not all of it. $119,000 from property and liability insurance, and $108,588 from supplemental state aid. And then lastly, this $11,690 from sale of town and land. That is actually the money that we received from the sale of those parcels back in September. So that's a little bit of money that's going toward our budget. The transfers in total $739,278, and you can see that that would leave us with a balance in the debt stabilization fund of $1,115,971. I wanted to bring that up because I think it's key that we've drawn down on that account, but the budget that I'd like to see the board consider also is predicated on putting substantial monies into that account. I think it's important that we continue to do so. So that's just an idea of available funds, and I was wondering before I move to the next part of the budget, which is really the expense side, if there's any questions about these reserve amounts at all.
I don't disagree with you that we should be building on this fund. But we've talked about in the past, and we've even had some audits done, and some of the advice through the auditor has been putting some money also towards our unfunded liability. And I don't think we've really ever taken a strong stance on, or making any effort on doing that. Can we at least consider that?
Yeah, I think in discussions I had with Greg, one thing he didn't talk about is the overlay reserve surplus.
Right. Okay.
Which is what we had talked about maybe using for that.
Okay.
It's too soon.
I know. Okay.
The chairman raises a good point, and the board has actually touched upon this in your discussion. There are two amounts here that, as we look at reserves or potential monies, the FEMA money, which we don't know what we're going to receive, and we don't know the timing, and the other is the overlay account. The overlay account is the amount of abatements, unused abatement money from prior years. It's released by the Board of Assessors dependent upon what the status of various abatement requests is. In the past, the town's done a good job in terms of going back and scouring those accounts out. You remember under the Quinville settlement, we did that. The Board of Assessors is meeting this week, so I'll have a better idea of available funds through the overlay account that could potentially be applied toward the budget. But I would suggest it's probably in the tens of thousands of dollars and really no higher than that at this point. And that could very well go to what you just suggested.
The other thing, Greg, is that you and I talked about was the unused reserve exercise.
Yes.
These past years.
Yes, that's, as we move through, I'd like to touch upon that, because there are a couple of critical budget drivers and decisions that need to be made. One of them deals with the reserve that we have for the snow deficit for this fiscal year. The other is health insurance. Those are really the key budget drivers that as we go forward, and we don't need to make a decision on those today, but we need to at least look at how we want to handle those things. And one of the things I thought about with the snow reserve, and this is my thought, and please feel free to tell me I'm wrong. I'd like to see that money be retained or be held. In other words, what I don't want to do is I don't want to distribute it to department budgets, because what will happen is it'll put us behind the 8 ball in terms of having those monies available for a deficit next year at this time. The other thing is it'll be built into the budget, and it'll force us to make cuts. But moreover, one of the things that I was thinking of would be an appropriate use for those monies is at October town meeting, funding some of the capital expenses that we have from raise and appropriate. Typically what we've done is we've borrowed money for capital. We have a $108 million school project, which is going to require significant borrowing resources. It makes some sense that in view of that we try to minimize other borrowings, and if we can afford to pay cash, such as that $250,000, we do so. And that's just a little bit of thought process in terms of how we see that be handled.
Couple of thoughts, thoughts and questions, I guess, or observations. As far as the employee benefits portion, and we're talking about this is what we have for anticipated surplus at the end of the fiscal year. And we're also talking about having to come up with some additional funds in order to maintain the current plan,
Right.
to the tune almost kind of a shell game as to where we put in, where we get our revenue, and then it, you know, our plan is to put it in the debt stabilization fund, and then we go back to the debt stabilization fund and pull it
Right.
out and
I
fund it.
think, Steve, all these options clearly are on the table.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Greg and I have
I just wanna,
gone
yeah, I just wanna
back and
present them and get them out.
No, that's fine.
We've gone back and forth with different options. I think the decision process, which doesn't need to be made today, I think today is the very important. And then there's a financial planning team meeting this week, is for us to look at the budget numbers and understand the gap before we make any adjustments. Because that, you know, obviously then, now you're looking at what the board considers to be, maybe consider to be priorities over other things, how we should.
I know, I guess, and I understand that, I guess what I'm seeing in front of us right now is, you know, the anticipated transfers into the debt stabilization fund to the tune of $700,000, when we're looking at shortfalls in maintaining, you know, level coverage, say, in that particular line item, as well as some other additional things that the board talked about as far as prioritizing services that are gonna be delivered. And devoid of all of this is, you know, where the school department is in relation to their shortfall, which is at, what's it at these days? 1.2 million, right, $1.2 million. So, and I understand the finance planning team is gonna be wrestling with some of those details, but I don't necessarily wanna be endorsing or embracing a concept here that isn't going to be realistic either. And as far as, you know, the snow and ice surplus, where would you put that, in the finance committee reserve fund again?
No, I'd leave it as unspent, raise and appropriate. Then we go to the October town meeting, and we simply just vote to raise and appropriate those monies toward capital expenses. That gives us the option, because we can do that at October town meeting before setting the tax rate. And again, the plan is to defer, I would like to defer as much capital expenses as we typically have done until the October town meeting. And if we can afford to pay cash for those, it makes some sense to do that.
That would make sense if we can do it, but I mean, looking at the realistic,
I
From
think
a
when we
real-
get through the budget numbers, you're gonna find out that it's gonna be hard to do some.
it's gonna be very difficult to do that, so I don't necessarily want to, you know, well, conceptually, that's a nice thing to do, but it doesn't look from a realistic
Right.
standpoint, we're gonna be able to achieve that. And so that being said, maybe we should just hop right to the, what we believe is going to occur and happen, and lay that out as far as
Keep
what
in
we
mind,
should be.
Steve, that if the money is put into the debt stabilization, right, it's being put in there not to just keep it there. It's gonna end up being applied to some level to next year's budget. So whether it goes to the insurance, it goes to the debt stabilization, doesn't really matter.
No, I know, but I think if we're gonna call it a debt stabilization fund, I'd like to get back to what the original concept of the creation of this fund is for. And now more than ever, it's probably critical to try and keep that balanced, so that the regular, the tax rate as it's affected by the general operating budget, you know, can be managed a little bit more clearly. A little easier, minimize the impact of our borrowings. So, it's nice to identify it, it's nice to
Yeah.
see where the monies are. It's just to suggest that we're gonna be putting it over here, knowing full well it's coming out of there. Why don't we just say, you know, we have a shortfall as far as our shared expenses, you know, that one portion of our budget, 1/3 of the budget, three buckets that we have, the shared costs. We have a shortfall there that we're going to have to make up. So that's coming out of either the available funds in the way of surpluses or available revenues first, and then the rest of it gets divided up, and then we pay for cash, pay cash for whatever we can. The rest we have to borrow, because again, we still are going to have some significant investments that we need to make in equipment and infrastructure. We're probably gonna have to borrow.
I understand. I just wanted to, I apologize to the board that I meant to make a point on the debt stabilization fund, page 3 of my green sheet. And one of the things, I showed you a balance of $1,115,971. The present balance is $376. My goal is to to not only use a significant portion of it to offset this year's, the 2013, what I want to do is grow that balance at the same time. So I would expect that we would leave town meeting in June with that balance, remaining balance in the debt stabilization fund being in excess of $500,000. So not only will we use a portion of money to pay the budget, we don't want to use it all. What we're going to do is we need to leave enough in there and more in there. My plan is to leave more in there for next fiscal year when we sit here a year from now, that we have a substantial balance bigger than what we had on June 30th of last year. So that's part of the plan too, is I want to grow that balance, because I agree, we don't want to hit that and fall off a cliff. And I think this year we're feeling the pain of that a little bit. But give me an opportunity just to go through some of the expense side budget items with you, and just give you an idea or some suggestions and ideas. And again, if the board doesn't like them, just give me a shout out and let me know, and we'll go back and we'll revisit. But as a result of, if you want to turn to the page which starts off, says Town of North Reading fiscal 13-2000 appropriation projection. What I've done is gone through the budget with the finance director, and we've identified adjustments that we can make to the municipal side of the budget in an attempt to try to balance it. In some instances, there are additions, and in other instances, there are deletions. For example, the additions would be items that the board had requested. The board had requested that the code red system, which is the emergency 911, be included in the town administrator's budget. We funded the E-code in the town clerk's budget, and we added back a portion of the small capital in the fire department related to the mechanic's position. So there have been additions and deletions on both sides. As you go through, you'll see the notes that are in the right-hand column of what those are and what the dollar amounts that are associated with each of them. It's perhaps easier if you were to flip to the last page, and really the last page is kind of the key document in everything that we're talking about here. The last page is a listing of 10 things that I think we can do to bring the municipal budget closer in balance. Remember, the deficit that we started off was in excess of $1.4 billion, county and school. So as we go through, there are a number of things that can be done to bring the budget into balance. The first one is the removal of fuel. It has nothing to do with bringing our budget into balance. It just is a change in terms of how we account for it. The first one is the removal of the miscellaneous capital, and that totaled $56,792. And
You lost me now.
I'm sorry. Number one is the removal of the miscellaneous capital, small capital.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Last page.
I got one more page, okay.
Last
Okay.
page. That will be deferred until October. This second item would be the transfer of the fuel that has no impact in terms of the dollars on the budget, just in terms of where it would go. The third recommendation.
Stay on it too, I'm still not in favor of.
I understand, and I wholeheartly understand, and it'll endorse exactly what the board wants to do. I just wanted to show it here as something that we're looking at. Removal of the non-union merit increases from the salary pool, total $55,000. Again, the removal of the conservation agent salary from the operating budget. You'll remember that it was funded through the revolving fund, and the Conservation Commission had requested that it be included within the operating budget.
So we were suggesting not putting it in?
I'm just, as a proposal that I'm suggesting to the board, this is how I would try to get to a balanced budget.
Okay.
Okay, so feel free to say, we don't like that, we don't think it's gonna
I
work.
don't know how we fund that position out of a revolving fund.
When do you want the comment? After you go through the list?
Yeah, let me go through
That's what I'm
Otherwise-
confused too. I think probably after each item would probably be better.
Tell me,
better.
Jump in.
Yeah, I just don't see how we fund that position by a revolving fund based upon what we've heard at the department presentation. I don't think it gets funded.
Yeah, and I concur that, I mean, the position is still a necessary function that has to be performed by the town. It needs personnel to do it. Right now, we're doing it with a contract employee, which is probably the least expensive way of approaching it and doing it, so I don't necessarily, I'm not suggesting we do it otherwise. But those funds that were once available for a number of years are no longer being generated at a rate fast enough to sustain it.
Has
So
someone gone back and